Hello, I'm Jordan Nielsen here to go through a GitHub Actions Hello World video. I think GitHub Actions are fantastic, particularly for tasks that you want to make sure are run whenever an event happens on GitHub, like a push or a pull request or a deploy. All of those are great use cases for GitHub Actions. In this video, we're going to go through a couple Hello World type actions for a project that I've got set up that is a pretty simple, just Next.js TypeScript starter project. The project doesn't actually matter because I just chose that one since it does need a build step. But you could use GitHub Actions with pretty much anything that you'll put on GitHub. So we have this project here. This is basically all it's got. There's a bunch of other files here from the Next.js starter, but we're going to ignore most of them. And so you'll see here it is up on GitHub. And so we're going to get into GitHub Actions. You can find actions in this tab right here. Before we go there, we're going to check out the pricing because that's an important point. So this repository is public because GitHub Actions are free for public repositories. Private repositories, every plan has a number of included minutes. It's pretty generous. I haven't yet hit the limit on any of the repositories that I have that are private. So take that as you may. You do pay more for minutes beyond those included ones, depending on which kind of machine you have. We're going to be using a Linux runner, so the cheapest one possible if we do go over. So we're going to jump over to their quick start documentation because the documentation they have for GitHub Actions is quite good. And so we're going to jump in and create our first workflow. This one's going to be a Hello World workflow. And so we want to zoom in a bit here. We want to create a new .github directory with a workflows subdirectory with a file named GitHub Actions demo.yaml. And so this file, we'll just go ahead and copy paste the contents they have. The key things here is you have a name on, which specifies which events you want to trigger on. So this one says push. It could also be deploy or commit or a whole host of other actions that you can find in their documentation. And then the jobs, the things that are run. So this is all one job, explore GitHub Actions. And it runs on Ubuntu latest, which is just fine for me. And the steps that this will do are run echo commands. It'll check out using an existing action. It will check out the code for your repository and then run a couple more echo commands. So let's push this up. We'll go ahead and pull this up. For this video, we're just going to commit directly to the main branch, but you can also have actions run on pull requests, which we might show at the end. All right, so we will push up real quick that GitHub action. And once that's pushed, we should be able to pull it up here. And so there are no workflow runs yet. It has just started. So it starts out queued, and then it'll eventually get started going. So now it's in progress. And if we click in here, we can see the logs. So it ran an echo. So there's the echo. And here's the actual output. And so down here, we can check out repository code. So this is a pre-built action. It's available at github.com/actions/checkout. And we're pulling version 2. And so it pulled down our repository and said, hey, this has been cloned. And then it's now ready. So it lists the files in the repository. And that's all of these. Or I guess the folders as well. And then it sets the status to success by just ending with a status code of 0, I believe. And so then the job is complete and it cleans it up. So that was a 3-second job. Total duration of 17 seconds. So not too shabby for something that you want to just have running automatically. So this hello world action is not super useful. Doesn't actually do anything with your repository. And so for this project, we want to make sure that since it is TypeScript that we're using the TypeScript features. And so we have a build script that we can run. So before we do that, we do need to install our dependencies. So we'll leave all those things there. And right before it says the job status, we'll go ahead and add a new step. So you'll notice in some of these that they have a name. So like this one, list files in the repository has a name. Otherwise, it just prints out run and then the command that was run. So you could go through and give everything a name. We are going to give our things a name because I find it easier to work with. So since this is a node project, we need to set up node. And we're going to use node 14 because that's the current LTS version. And so in order to do this, there is an existing Node.js action. You can find various actions on the GitHub marketplace. It's like there's a Node.js setup node, I think is what it's called. Yeah, setup Node.js. So this is from the GitHub team, and it's a way to set up a Node.js action right here. So we'll go ahead and pull those in. And since this is YAML, we do have to check our spacing with that paste. And so after that, as it suggests, we'll do name, install dependencies. And there are things you could do to speed this up, like caching, but we're not going to get into that because there's so few dependencies in this project that npm install should be quick enough. And then we'll build project. And here we'll do npm run build. All right, so let's go ahead and commit this and see what a run looks like. And so we push that up. All right, so in this step, we pulled in another pre-developed action that will set up Node.js for us. And then we added 2 custom steps running npm scripts. So here, setting up node 14 was rather fast. And so now it's installing dependencies. As I said, there's very few of them, so it was rather quick. And so it ran npm install. And then here it'll run a build for us. And great, it finished the build. It was a success. You'll notice that there's a post setup node 14 cleanup, as well as a post cleanup for the repository code, and then the job completes. So the pre-built actions tend to have some cleanup steps as well, which is kind of nice that they're already built for you. All right, so in this, we just saw that it built our code for us. So that one took 32 seconds, so added a little bit of time. Yeah, so not too wild there. But what happens if it fails? So you'll notice now that they're both green check marks. Nothing too wild. But if we deliberately introduce a build failure, like just deleting the contents of this file. So this should fail the build because it's an empty file now. And Next does not like that. And so we'll pull up that run once it pulls up here. go. So now we have this run here, and it's trying to build the project, but there's an error. And so you'll notice that it skipped the next steps that are not always run, because this process completed with exit code 1. It threw an error. And so we now have the red X. Not great, but it happens sometimes. And so if you do have that happen, and you don't think that there's an actual problem, you could always rerun the jobs right here, and it will kick off a new run. Pretty useful. But otherwise, you have to go into your code, and we'll bring back the working version. So working version again, and we'll get another green check mark. And so while that's running, there are a lot of other things that you can do with GitHub Actions. It's a pretty fully featured Docker container that you're working with, at least for the Ubuntu latest container. And so there are projects I have that I've worked on that use like a Postgres instance inside their GitHub action to run a database and run a bunch of tests against the project with that built-in database, and it's pretty slick. I have appreciated GitHub Actions making it easier to automate a lot of this. And so now we have our green build again. And so now whenever we push our code, the action will run and tell us, hey, your code built, or hey, your code had an error. And I said we weren't going to, but I kind of want to. So we're going to go ahead and do a pull request as well. And we'll do a pull request that changes the action text, or the action steps, so you can see what is happening there. So we'll take away the job is now running online because they're all running on Ubuntu. And we are also going to take away the line about the job being triggered by an event because it's always running on push right now. We also don't need it to list the files in the repository. That's just a little bit of extra noise. We'll leave these other echoes here because they're actually kind of nice. And so we'll save this, we'll create a new branch, and we'll call it extra steps. And so we'll commit to that branch and push that one up. And so we push it up, and do we want to create a pull request? Actually, not yet. So since we have this running on push, the action is running already. And so you'll see here, our actions steps have been pruned down. So it does run the updated action if it's changed in a pull request, which is very nice. And so it'll build. And then in the pull request that you can open, I'll go ahead and create the pull request. And here you can see all checks have passed. So it does count the action as a pull request check automatically, at least since it has run on push. There are also actions that run on PR. And I believe that those also show up. Actions that run on deploy only show up if you explicitly wait for them to finish or add a setting that says it has to pass that check. So in your repository settings, there are branches. Yeah, branch protection rules that you can do of requiring status checks. So like I could say explore GitHub Actions is a required status check. So that'll pull it up even if the action hasn't started running yet, because that's what usually you'll run into with like a deploy action, is it won't show up immediately because the deploy hasn't started or even finished yet. And so if you don't have that setting activated, then people could merge their pull request without that check. And that is all that I wanted to show about GitHub Actions today. We'll go ahead and merge this pull request to show off one last extra thing, which you'll see that merging a pull request does count as a push, and so it will run the action again. And if you don't want that, then you'll probably be looking for PR actions. And that is all I had.